Hey everyone, welcome back to Genai's Linux News. And we are kicking things off with the big one. Linux 7.0 has officially landed. As reported by Fornix, OMG Ubuntu, and its FOSS, Linus Torvalds dropped the stable Linux 7.0 kernel this past weekend, and it is packed with goodies. Now, before anyone gets too hyped about the version number itself, Linus has been clear that 7.0 doesn't mark some revolutionary single change. The major version ticked up simply because hitting version 6.19 felt awkward. That said, what's inside is genuinely exciting. According to Fornix, Linux 7.0 brings improvements across Intel and AMD hardware, self-healing XFS file system capabilities, faster swap performance, and new hardware video decoding support for Rockchip ARM64 single-board computers. OMG Ubuntu also highlights that this is the kernel powering the upcoming Ubuntu 26.04 LTS release, so it's going to reach a massive number of users. There's also a standardized file system error reporting system baked in, and in true Linux fashion, even some quirky additions, like Bluetooth support for Rock Band for controllers. Yes, really. Its FOSS notes that from Nova Lake audio improvements to Zen 6 preparation, this release truly covers a lot of ground. Linux 7.0 is a big deal, folks, even if the version number jumped a little earlier than some expected. Alright, next up is something that Linux gamers using NVIDIA hardware are going to want to hear about. Fornix is reporting on GreenBoost-Proton, a fresh new branch of the GreenBoost project specifically targeting Linux gaming. So here's the backstory. GreenBoost started as an open-source solution that lets NVIDIA GPUs tap into system RAM and even NVMe storage to supplement limited vRAM. A brilliant idea for running large AI models on cards that don't have mountains of onboard memory. The project hit a snag when NVIDIA raised some legal concerns, which forced the developer to rethink the approach. But rather than fold, the project came back in a new form, and now it's branching out with GreenBoost-Proton. This new variant is aimed squarely at Linux gaming through Proton, Valve's compatibility layer for running Windows games on Linux. The idea is that games running through Proton could benefit from that same memory tiering technology, effectively giving your GPU more breathing room when vRAM runs tight during demanding titles. This is still early days, but it's a genuinely clever use of the underlying technology. For NVIDIA users on Linux who've been frustrated by vRAM limitations in modern games, this project is absolutely worth keeping an eye on. Here's a story that's got the Linux community buzzing. Its FOSS is reporting that AI-assisted code has now received an official policy blessing from the Linux kernel maintainers, but with some important strings attached. For a long time, the kernel's stance on AI-generated contributions was murky at best. Maintainers were skeptical, and patches suspected of being AI-generated were often turned away without much ceremony. Now, the kernel project has formalized its position. Developers are allowed to use AI coding assistance as part of their workflow, but the human submitting the patch is fully responsible for every single line. That means you can't hide behind the AI wrote it. If there's a bug, a security hole, or a licensing issue, that's on you as the contributor. Maintainers will still scrutinize AI-assisted patches just as rigorously as any other submission, and contributors must be transparent about AI involvement where relevant. It's a pragmatic, measured stance that acknowledges the reality of modern development workflows while keeping the kernel's quality bar firmly in place. Honestly, given how much of the software world is grappling with the same question right now, it's good to see the kernel community land on something concrete. Staying in kernel territory, Fornix has the details on a brand new file system proposal that just hit the Linux mailing lists. It's called FTRFS, short for Fault-Tolerant File System, and it's already generating more buzz than last week's quirky VMUFAT proposal. The initial patch series has been sent out for community review and comment, which is the standard first step before anything gets considered for kernel inclusion. Fornix describes it as a notably interesting proposal, though as with all early-stage file system work, it's going to go through significant scrutiny before anyone should consider running it on their data. The Linux ecosystem has seen a lot of file system action lately. Btrfs continues to mature. XFS just got self-healing capabilities in 7.0, and now a fault-tolerant contender is entering the conversation. It's genuinely exciting to see file system innovation continuing at this pace. We'll be watching how the community responds to FTRFS as the review process unfolds, so stay tuned for future coverage on this one. Here's one for the performance nerds in the audience. Phoronix is reporting that jemalloc 5.3.1 has been released, and this is a bigger deal than the modest version bump might suggest. For context, the last release was jemalloc 5.3.0, and that landed almost 4 years ago. That's nearly 4 years of silence from one of the most widely used memory allocators in the open-source ecosystem. Jemalloc is used everywhere, from databases to browsers to game servers. So when it goes quiet for that long, people start to wonder. But it's back now, and according to Phoronix, 5.3.1 brings a substantial haul of performance improvements, brand new features, and various enhancements that have been accumulating during that long hiatus. The details on exactly what changed are extensive, which is exactly what you'd expect after such a lengthy development gap. If you're running software that uses jemalloc under the hood, and there's a decent chance you are, this update is worth paying attention to. It's great to see this project come back to life. This next story is a satisfying one for a community that's been very patient. Phoronix reports that Star Labs has finally delivered Coreboot support for the StarBook MK VI laptop, more than 3 years after the feature was advertised at the time of purchase. The StarBook MK VI is powered by AMD's Ryzen 5000 series, and Coreboot support was one of the key selling points that attracted privacy-conscious and freedom-focused buyers to the machine. But the promised firmware kept slipping, and understandably, some customers grew frustrated. Well, the wait is over. A working Coreboot build is now available for the StarBook MK VI. Coreboot, for those unfamiliar, is an open-source firmware replacement for the proprietary BIOS or UEFI found on most computers. It gives users far more transparency and control over their hardware's boot process and is a major draw for the security and open-source communities. 3 years is a long time to wait for a promised feature, and Star Labs will certainly need to earn back some trust. But delivering eventually is far better than never delivering at all. If you've got a StarBook MK VI collecting dust while waiting for this, now's your moment. And finally, let's zoom out and look ahead, because even though Linux 7.0 just shipped, the Linux 7.1 merge window is already open and things are moving fast. Phoronix has been tracking all the early pull requests, and there's a lot to like. Btrfs is getting more performance optimizations, and its shutdown IACTL feature is graduating from experimental status to stable, a nice maturity milestone for that file system. On the Rust front, Phoronix reports that Linux 7.1 is bumping the minimum required Rust version for kernel builds and introducing an experimental option that could deliver meaningful performance improvements for Rust code running inside the kernel. That's a big deal as Rust's footprint in the kernel continues to grow. Over on the AMD GPU side, its FOSS is reporting that an open-source developer has put together a set of 6 kernel patches and 2 utilities to address vRAM mismanagement issues that have been plaguing AMD GPU users on Linux. And Phoronix also reports that user extended attributes on sockets have been merged, a change that GNOME and systemd developers had been pushing for. Linux 7.1 is shaping up to be another strong release. We'll keep covering it as the merge window progresses, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of it. That's all for today's episode of Genai's Linux News. If you found this useful, smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you in the next one. Stay curious and keep running Linux.